Following the revelation that the Empire's terrifying new weapon, the Death Star, had a crucial flaw buried deep within it, several factions within the Rebel Alliance lobbied for an effort to steal the plans for the Death Star so this flaw could be identified. However, unable to agree on a plan, Rebel leadership was left with no choice but to formally decide to scatter and basically abolish the Rebel Alliance. Unwilling to accept defeat, a unit of Rebel forces went rogue, stealing an already stolen Imperial transport and making their way to the Imperial Archive world of Scarif. Upon their arrival, this rebel force, disguised as an Imperial transport, passed through the planetary shield, protecting Scarif, and made their way to a large archive facility on the surface. Their rebel forces began carrying out guerrilla attacks against Imperial defensive forces garrisoned there. Rebel intelligence had been monitoring Imperial communication and quickly got wind of an attack being carried out on Scarif. Seeing the opportunity and disagreeing with the decision of rebel leadership, several key rebel leaders decided to take action, mustering a force to go support the already raging battle on Scarif. A major portion of this force was a large rebel naval element which consisted of a majority of the rebel navy. The rebel fleet was headed by a single MC-75 starcruiser, the Profundity, under the command of the fleet's admiral, Admiral Radis. But on top of that, the rebel fleet consisted of at least 3 Nebulon B escort frigates, 4 Bratok-class gunships, 3 Hammerhead corvettes, including the Consulance and the Lightmaker, at least 6 CR-90 corvettes, including the Tantive 4, and at least 12 GR-75 transports. By the time the order was given for Rebel starfighters to take off and join the engagement, the fleet had already departed for Scarif, and the forces of Gold, Red, Blue, and Green Squadron were forced to play catch-up. However, they were able to muster with Rebel forces and arrive in unison with the main body of the Rebel fleet. The Rebel fleet arrived to find the Shield Gate, the only access through the planetary shield, defended by a pair of Imperial-class Star Destroyers, the Persecutor and the Intimidator. On top of these 2 Imperial-class Star Destroyers, though, the Shield Gate itself was a veritable fortress, bristling with turbo lasers and harboring a very large number of TIE-LN starfighters. Upon their arrival in system, Admiral Radis quickly dispatched orders to the fighter squadrons supporting him. Red and Gold squadrons would be tasked with defending the Rebel fleet, while Blue Squadron was directed down to the surface to support ground operations. Ultimately, 12 X-Wings and a single U-Wing were able to make it through the Shield Gate before it was closed by Imperial officers. 7 X-Wings of Blue Squadron, however, never made it through the gate, with 1 of them being shot down on the approach, 2 crashing into the shield after it closed, 1 colliding with the gate station itself, and the other 3 being forced to pull up and rejoin the fight in space. The 3 fighters that were forced to pull up from the initial assault redirected their attention to the nearby Star Destroyer, the Persecutor, where they carried out an assault which successfully disabled the shields around its bridge. Still intending to focus their effort on the Shield Gate with an intention of breaking through to the ground forces, Admiral Radis formulated a plan. 10 X-Wings of Gold Squadron began carrying out a diversionary attack against the Shield Gate, focusing primarily on destroying the gate's defensive turrets. Meanwhile, the Y-Wings of Gold Squadron were directed to carry out a heavy bombing run with the intention of destroying the Shield Gate. Using 10 Y-Wings, they carried out an initial pass, however, 3 of the Y-Wings were destroyed in the first run, and in response, the Imperial forces on the Shield Gate deployed a vast number of TIE-LN starfighters. This deployment of starfighters forced the Rebel assault on the gate to be called off so the fighters could be withdrawn back to the Rebel fleet to protect it against this Imperial attack. Having been forced to wave off from his initial assault against the Shield Gate, Admiral Radis began formulating a new plan to attack the Imperial Star Destroyers. However, the relentless attack carried out against the Rebel fleet by the Imperial TIE fighters, as well as the turbo lasers on the Shield Gate and the 2 Imperial-class Star Destroyers, were able to destroy several GR-75 transports and 1 of the Nebulon Bs. The same attack was also able to reduce the Profundity's shields to about half strength. In order to lessen this attack and hopefully gain an upper hand in the battle, a flight of Y-Wings from Gold Squadron were ordered to carry out a pass on the now unshielded Star Destroyer, the Persecutor. These Y-Wings, firing multiple ion torpedoes, were able to disable the Star Destroyer, leaving it basically dead in space. Seeing an opportunity, Admiral Radis reached out to the captain of the Hammerhead corvette, the Lightmaker. The Lightmaker had received significant damage earlier in the battle, covering the retreat from the initial attack on the Shield Gate, and as such was sort of just holding back. Upon the command of Admiral Radis, all non-essential crew members were evacuated from the Lightmaker, and it was brought around behind the disabled Imperial-class Star Destroyer. The Lightmaker was then wedged up against the side of the Persecutor and, using its sublight engines, nudged the disabled Imperial-class Star Destroyer on a collision course with the Intimidator. Realizing the threat to his ship, Admiral Gorin, commander of the Intimidator, ordered his ship put into full reverse. However, he wasn't able to move quick enough to avoid a collision, with the massive prow of the Persecutor slicing into the superstructure of the Intimidator, rendering both ships completely destroyed. The massive destroyed hulks of both vessels came crashing down on the shield gate, destroying that as well. The force of the two Imperial-class Star Destroyers, as well as the ruins of the shield gate, crashing into the planetary shield, ultimately overloaded it, forcing the shield to be dropped. With the shield down, Rebel forces on the surface of the planet were able to transmit the plans for the Death Star up to the Rebel fleet. However, it's around this time that the DS-1 platform, more commonly known as the Death Star, arrived on the battlefield. Positioning itself in the distance, the Death Star prepared for a shot against the Imperial facility on Scarif that was under an attack, in an effort to destroy the plans before they could be transmitted, unaware that they had already been transmitted. With the plans in hand, Rebel forces in space began plotting a retreat, hoping that the forces on the ground could flee in time. However, they were unable to, with the Death Star's super laser being fired against the facility on the ground. Ultimately, 3 CR-90 corvettes, 2 GR-75 transports, 1 Hammerhead corvette, the Consonance, and a number of Rebel starfighters were able to jump to hyperspace before Darth Vader's flagship, the Imperial 1-class Star Destroyer, the Devastator, was able to arrive. The Devastator jumped out of hyperspace right in the path of the fleeing Rebel forces. The arrival of the Devastator ultimately causing many of the Rebel forces to wave off to avoid a collision. However, 1 GR-75 was unable to turn in time and was destroyed upon its collision with the Devastator's hull. Almost immediately upon arrival, the turbolasers of the Devastator opened fire on the remaining Rebel ships, focusing its fire on the now wounded Profundity. This array of fire, however, did manage to destroy another Nebulon B, which was caught in the crossfire. With their shields down, the Profundity was basically defenseless and was ultimately rendered completely inoperable. Shortly thereafter, the wounded Profundity was boarded by an Imperial boarding team led by Sith Lord Darth Vader. With the capture of the Profundity, the battle ended, ultimately in a questionable Rebel victory. While the Rebel Alliance was ultimately able to steal the plans for the Death Star, which would end up leading them to the weakness that would be exploited during the Battle of Yavin, it cost them nearly the entirety of their navy and left the Rebel Alliance in a horrible strategic situation. As such, there is debate as to whether the Battle of Scarif can be considered a Rebel victory, and if you'd like to learn more about that, I'll leave a link in the upper right-hand corner to a video I have on that topic. And if you have any other battles you'd like to see covered in future episodes of Battle Analysis and added to the archive, leave that down below in the comments. Last but not least, if you enjoyed this video, head down below, hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the bell icon so you get notified when I upload new videos. So for Sci-Fi Deep Dive, I'm Colin, and I will see you next time.